The tradition started when I was 16 and Mom broke her wrist 2 days before Thanksgiving. "Sarah can handle it," she announced from her recliner, prescription painkillers making her drowsy. "She's been helping me cook for years." Helping meant peeling potatoes and setting tables. It didn't mean preparing a feast for 23 relatives with zero notice and no guidance. But somehow I managed it, staying up until 3 a.m. the night before, crying over burnt rolls, serving a meal that was edible if not elegant. "Sarah did such a wonderful job," everyone praised. "You're so lucky to have such a capable daughter." Mom beamed as if she'd trained me personally. Dad nodded approvingly. "Next year we'll let Sarah handle everything. She's clearly got a gift for this." I was exhausted, stressed, and had missed the entire holiday while frantically cooking and serving. But the praise felt good. Being useful felt good. Being needed felt like love. That was 18 years ago. Every Thanksgiving since, I've been the designated chef for our massive family gathering. What started as emergency help became permanent expectation. The guest list grew from 23 to 30 plus as cousins married and had children, but my role remained the same. Single-handedly prepare a restaurant-quality feast while everyone else enjoyed the holiday. Sarah's Thanksgiving became the family brand. Relatives would rave about Sarah's famous stuffing and Sarah's perfect gravy. They'd request specific dishes and dietary accommodations. They'd bring friends who'd heard about the incredible meal. The pressure to maintain my reputation grew each year. Nobody ever offered to help. Oh, they'd make token gestures. "Let me know if you need anything." But disappeared when I actually asked. They'd wander into the kitchen while I worked, sampling food and offering unhelpful commentary, but scatter when I suggested they could chop vegetables or stir something. "We don't want to get in your way," became the standard excuse. "You're so good at this, we just mess it up." The logistics alone were overwhelming. Shopping for 30 people meant multiple grocery trips with carefully calculated lists. Prep work started days in advance. Making desserts, preparing sides that could be stored, organizing cooking schedules to coordinate oven and stovetop space. Thanksgiving Day itself was a 12-hour marathon of cooking, timing, and serving. While everyone else watched football, played with kids, or relaxed with wine, I was trapped in the kitchen. I missed conversations, football games, and family moments. I ate my meal standing at the counter while cleaning dishes, long after everyone else had finished. The worst part was the criticism disguised as suggestions. "The turkey was a little dry last year. Could you make the stuffing less salty this time? Aunt Marie's rolls were better, but yours are fine." They treated me like hired catering staff, not a family member who was sacrificing her entire holiday for their comfort. By my mid-20s, the physical demands were crushing. Cooking for 30 people requires professional-level stamina and organization. I'd collapse into bed Thanksgiving night, exhausted and resentful, while everyone else had enjoyed a relaxing holiday. Friends would invite me to their Thanksgiving celebrations, but I always had to decline. "I can't, I'm cooking for my family." They looked puzzled. "Can't someone else cook? Or everyone bring something?" I'd never considered these options because my family had made it clear. Thanksgiving was my responsibility. Suggesting changes was met with horror. "But it won't be the same. You're so much better at it than anyone else." It's tradition. The tradition that mattered to them was receiving a perfect meal without effort. My tradition of working while they relaxed was apparently sacred. College provided temporary relief. I had legitimate excuses to miss some Thanksgivings. But even then, family members would call asking for recipes, complaining that Thanksgiving wasn't the same without Sarah's cooking. The guilt trips were intense. I was made to feel like I was abandoning family by pursuing my education. After graduation, there was no escape. I was back to full-time Thanksgiving duty, but now with added expectations. "You learned so much in college, I'm sure this will be even easier for you now." My career didn't matter. My relationships didn't matter. My own desire to enjoy a holiday didn't matter. What mattered was providing them with the perfect Thanksgiving experience they'd grown accustomed to. The breaking point built slowly over several years. Each Thanksgiving became more demanding as family members treated me less like a relative and more like a personal chef. They'd make special requests, dietary demands, and last-minute changes without considering the extra work involved. 3 years ago, my cousin brought her new boyfriend who was extremely picky about food. She handed me a list of his dislikes and allergies, expecting me to accommodate a complete stranger's preferences. When I suggested he could bring his own food or eat what he could from the available options, she was appalled. "Sarah, don't be difficult. It's Thanksgiving. Can't you just make sure there's something he can eat?" 2 years ago, my brother's wife decided to go gluten-free and expected me to prepare separate versions of every dish. When I explained that would double my workload, she accused me of being unsupportive of her health journey. Last year was the final straw. Dad handed me a list of 32 people 3 days before Thanksgiving. 8 more than I'd planned for. "Some folks are bringing friends," he explained casually. "I told them you wouldn't mind." I stood in my kitchen staring at that list, calculating the additional groceries, prep time and stress. I'd have to redo all my planning, buy more food and somehow accommodate 8 extra people with the same oven space and cooking schedule. "I do mind," I said quietly. "What?" "I mind. I can't cook for 32 people with 3 days' notice." Dad looked genuinely confused. "Sarah, you've always handled whatever we've thrown at you. What's different now?" What was different was that I was 34 years old and had spent 18 Thanksgivings working while everyone else celebrated. What was different was that I'd never had a relaxing holiday with my own family. What was different was that I was exhausted from being taken for granted. "I need help," I said. "Real help. Not people standing around offering to do anything while contributing nothing." "Well, you know how it is. Everyone has their own traditions and ways of doing things. It's easier if you just handle it." Easier for whom? Certainly not for me. That Thanksgiving was a disaster. I was overwhelmed, stressed, and resentful. The food was fine, but I snapped at people all day. I cried in the pantry while the turkey rested. I served dinner with red eyes and a fake smile, then locked myself in my room afterward. Multiple family members commented on my attitude problem and suggested I was getting too stressed about cooking. The solution, according to them, wasn't to reduce my workload. It was for me to handle stress better. In January, I started therapy. I needed help processing why I felt so angry and trapped by something I'd supposedly chosen to do. My therapist asked probing questions that revealed uncomfortable truths. "Do you enjoy cooking for your family?" I used to, years ago, when it was occasional help rather than mandatory labor. Now it felt like an obligation I couldn't escape. What would happen if you said no? They'd be disappointed, angry, and probably guilt me into compliance. Thanksgiving would be ruined, and it would be my fault. What if Thanksgiving was ruined? What would actually happen? People would have to figure out their own meal plans. They'd adapt. Life would continue. What do you want your Thanksgivings to look like? I wanted to enjoy the holiday. I wanted to spend time with family instead of working for them. I wanted to feel like a guest in my own life sometimes. My therapist helped me understand that I'd become trapped in a pattern of people-pleasing that had evolved into exploitation. My family had become accustomed to my sacrifice and now saw it as my natural role rather than a generous gift. We practiced setting boundaries and handling guilt trips. I learned to recognize the difference between helping family and being taken advantage of by family. I developed strategies for maintaining relationships while protecting my own needs. By October, I'd decided this would be my last Thanksgiving as sole chef. I would cook one final meal, announce my retirement from kitchen duty, and suggest alternatives for future years. But as Thanksgiving approached, the familiar pressure mounted. Dad presented the guest list, 30 people this year, with his usual assumption that I'd handle everything. Mom chimed in with special requests and dietary restrictions. Relatives called with their traditional demands for favorite dishes. The expectation was so absolute, so unquestioned, that I found myself falling back into old patterns. I started planning menus and making shopping lists despite my resolution to quit. The momentum of 18 years was hard to break. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I had an epiphany while standing in the grocery store. I was buying ingredients for a meal I didn't want to cook, for people who wouldn't appreciate the work involved, during a holiday I should be enjoying instead of enduring. I abandoned my cart and went home. That evening I called my best friend from college. "Are you doing anything for Thanksgiving?" "Flying to Portland to visit my sister." "Why? Can I come with you?" She was surprised but delighted. "Of course. But what about your family's big dinner? Aren't you cooking for like 50 people?" 30. And no, I'm not cooking for anyone this year. Booking a last-minute flight was expensive, but it felt like buying my freedom. I packed quickly, left my kitchen empty, and prepared for the confrontation that would inevitably come. Wednesday evening, Dad called with final details. Cooking starts at 4 a.m., right? Uncle Bob's bringing his new girlfriend and she's vegetarian, so make sure there are plenty of options for her. Oh, and Cousin Jennifer's kids are all going through picky phases, so maybe some plain pasta as backup. Actually, Dad, I won't be cooking tomorrow. Long pause. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not cooking Thanksgiving dinner. I'm going out of town. Sarah, this isn't funny. 30 people are expecting dinner. Then 30 people need to figure out alternative arrangements. You can't just abandon the family. It's Thanksgiving. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm taking a break from being the unpaid caterer. The conversation escalated quickly. Dad was angry, then panicked, then furious again. He cycled through guilt trips, accusations, and desperate pleas. How could I be so selfish? Didn't I care about family? What were they supposed to do now? I stayed calm, just like my therapist had taught me. You could order catering. You could make it potluck. You could go to a restaurant. You could ask someone else to host. Families across America manage Thanksgiving without having one person do all the work. But you're so good at it. And everyone's counting on you. Everyone's counting on me to sacrifice my holiday for their convenience. That's not fair, and I'm done with it. I hung up before he could respond. My phone immediately started buzzing with calls and texts from other family members who'd been alerted to the crisis. I turned it off. Thursday morning at 3 a.m., instead of starting turkey prep, I was in an Uber heading to the airport. Instead of calculating cooking times and oven schedules, I was buying coffee and settling into my window seat. Instead of sacrificing another holiday to other people's expectations, I was finally putting myself first. The guilt was intense during takeoff. 18 years of conditioning doesn't disappear overnight. I imagined the chaos back home as 30 people arrived expecting a feast and found empty kitchen. Part of me wanted to turn around and fix the situation I'd created. But a bigger part of me felt free for the first time in decades. Portland was beautiful. My friend's sister had a small gathering, just 8 people, where everyone contributed something. I brought wine and helped with cleanup afterward. We played board games, took walks, and actually enjoyed each other's company instead of just consuming food someone else had prepared. It was the most relaxing Thanksgiving I'd had since I was 15. My phone, when I finally turned it back on Friday, contained 47 messages. They ranged from angry to hurt to desperate to manipulative. The story I pieced together was predictably chaotic. The family had gathered Thursday expecting their usual feast. When they realized I wasn't there and no food was prepared, panic ensued. Some people left to find restaurants, most were closed. Others raided my parents' pantry for whatever they could find. A few relatives went to grocery stores and bought pre-made dishes. They ended up with a hodgepodge meal of store-bought turkey, instant mashing potatoes, canned vegetables, and frozen pies. It was, according to multiple messages, a disaster, and the worst Thanksgiving ever. Several family members blamed me for ruining the holiday. Others were hurt that I'd left without warning. A few were angry that I'd abandoned family during a time when we're supposed to be together. But buried among the guilt trips and accusations were a few messages that gave me hope. My cousin Mark, I never realized how much work you put into Thanksgiving. I'm sorry we took you for granted. My Aunt Linda, I understand why you needed a break. We should have helped more over the years. My brother, Mom and Dad are furious, but honestly, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. The most telling response came from my teenage niece. It was actually kind of fun figuring out dinner together. Like a cooking adventure. But Uncle Dave burned the rolls and Grandpa complained the whole time. Over the following weeks, family dynamics slowly shifted. Some relatives remained angry and refused to speak to me. They couldn't forgive me for disrupting their comfortable arrangement. These were people who had valued me only as a service provider, and without that service they had no use for me. Others began to understand what they'd been asking of me all those years. They reached out with apologies and invitations to smaller, more manageable gatherings where cooking duties were shared. My parents took the longest to come around. They felt embarrassed by the Thanksgiving disaster, and blamed me for making them look bad in front of relatives. It took several honest conversations before they could see the situation from my perspective. We never asked you to cook for everyone, Mom protested during one particularly difficult phone call. You didn't have to ask. You expected it and I delivered. For 18 years. But you seemed to enjoy it. I enjoyed feeling useful and appreciated. I didn't enjoy sacrificing every Thanksgiving while everyone else relaxed. We didn't know you felt that way. This was the hardest part to accept. That they genuinely hadn't considered my experience. In their minds, I was fulfilling my natural role as the family caretaker. They'd never questioned whether that role was fair or sustainable because it worked for them. Eventually, we found a new equilibrium. Thanksgiving became a potluck where everyone contributed according to their abilities. Some people brought appetizers, others handled sides, a few managed desserts. The host, rotating annually, provided the turkey and coordination. The meals weren't as elaborate or perfectly coordinated as my solo productions. But they were more enjoyable because everyone participated. People appreciated the food more when they understood the work involved. Children learned to help instead of just consuming. Most importantly, I got to be a family member instead of kitchen staff. I could sit with relatives, watch football, play with kids, and actually enjoy the holiday I'd been working through for nearly 2 decades. 3 years later, our family Thanksgivings are smaller but warmer. Some relatives stopped attending when they couldn't get their perfect free meal, but the people who remained genuinely wanted to spend time together. We focus more on connection and less on consumption. I still cook, but as one contributor among many rather than sole provider. I make dishes I enjoy preparing and eat meals that are still warm. I have conversations during dinner instead of serving it. I participate in my own holiday. The Portland trip became an annual tradition. My friend and I alternate between visiting her family and exploring new cities during Thanksgiving week. It's my reminder that holidays can be about joy and discovery rather than obligation and exhaustion. My family now understands that my presence at their gatherings is a choice, not a given. That makes the time we spend together more meaningful because it's based on mutual enjoyment rather than one-sided service. Looking back, I realized that my Thanksgiving rebellion wasn't about abandoning family. It was about saving it. The old system was unsustainable and unfair. By refusing to continue enabling it, I forced everyone to find a better way. The people who truly cared about me adapted and apologized. The people who only valued my labor revealed their true priorities by cutting contact. Either way, I learned who my real family was. Today, I'm grateful for many things on Thanksgiving. The family members who love me as a person, not a service provider. The confidence to set boundaries even when it's difficult. The freedom to enjoy holidays instead of enduring them. And the knowledge that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to let them take advantage of you. It forces everyone to grow into healthier patterns and more authentic relationships. My kitchen is no longer a prison and Thanksgiving is no longer a source of dread. That's worth more than any perfectly prepared feast.
As soon as Patricia placed the teacup in front of me, I knew something was wrong. My mother-in-law gave me a sly smile, watching closely as I lifted the cup to my lips. "The tea tastes strange," she asked, pretending to be concerned. I took another sip, meeting her gaze. "No, it's perfect. My name is Olivia. I'm 32, and for the past 5 years, Patricia has been trying to push me out of her son's life. But this time, she had gone too far. 2 weeks ago, I saw her in my garden taking care of some unfamiliar plants. Patricia had always criticized my lack of gardening skills, so seeing her there was odd. Then she suddenly insisted on weekly family dinners, something she used to avoid. "I just want us to be closer," she had said, forcing a smile. I might have believed her, if I hadn't caught her researching poisonous plants late one night. She thought no one was awake, but I saw words like untraceable and symptoms on her laptop before she quickly shut it. That's when I contacted my friend Emma, a toxicologist. I told her my suspicions, and she helped me prepare. Now, sitting at Patricia's table, I watched her closely. My husband, Mark, was working late. How convenient. "You know, Patricia," I said casually, putting down my cup, "you've taken a sudden interest in herbs." She stiffened slightly. "Oh, I just like trying new things. How are you feeling? You look a bit pale." "I'm fine," I said, checking my phone. "But I'm curious about that new plant you're growing, the one with purple flowers." Her expression flickered. "I don't know what you mean." "No?" I scrolled through my phone. "Strange, because I have photos of you planting it. It's called a conatum, or wolfsbane. Highly toxic." Patricia's face turned pale. I don't. You know, I continued, it's hard to detect in poisonings unless someone is looking for it. She shot up from her chair. You're talking nonsense. Oh, I'm feeling perfectly fine, I said, because I've been taking an antidote for a week now. My friend Emma helped me prepare it. Her hands trembled. You're lying. I pulled out a small recorder. I also recorded our conversation, and I have video of you planting and preparing the wolfsbane, plus screenshots of your search history. You went through my computer, she gasped. No need. You should really use incognito mode when looking up murder methods. I stood up. I've already sent the evidence to my lawyer. If anything happens to me, the police will get it. Patricia sank into her chair, her plan falling apart. You don't understand, she whispered. Mark deserves better. Someone from a good family, someone you can control? I cut in. That's what this is about, isn't it? Just then, the front door opened. Mom? Olivia? Sorry I'm late. Mark called out. Patricia's eyes filled with panic. I leaned in. You have a choice. You can tell Mark everything, or I will. As Mark walked in, I smiled. You're home early. Your mother and I were just talking about her new gardening hobby. Mark stood in the doorway, looking at us with confusion. The room was heavy with tension, and Patricia's hands trembled as she gripped the table. What's going on? He asked, his eyes shifting to his mother. Mom, are you okay? Before Patricia could speak, I held up my phone, showing him photos of her garden. Your mom has been growing some interesting plants. Do you want to explain what you plan to do with the wolfsbane, Patricia? Mark frowned. Wolfsbane? That's poisonous, isn't it? Patricia suddenly burst into tears, but this time they weren't her usual fake sobs. She looked truly terrified. It's not what you think, she said, turning to Mark. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? Mark's eyes landed on the teacup in front of me. His face darkened. Mom, what did you do? I took out a small recorder and pressed play. Patricia's earlier words filled the room, her fake concern, my calm responses, and then her panic when I revealed that I knew about the poison. Mark slowly sank into a chair, his face pale. You tried to poison Olivia, my wife? She's not good enough for you. Patricia suddenly screamed. She's turned you against me. Everything was perfect before she came along. Perfect? Mark's voice was sharp. You mean when you controlled everything, when you scared away every woman I dated? I placed my hand on his arm. There's more. I showed him the screenshots of her research, poisonous plants, their effects, how to make them untraceable. She's been planning this for weeks. Patricia slumped in her chair, defeated. I just wanted what was best for you, she whispered. Mark stood, fists clenched. No, Mom, you wanted what was best for you. You tried to murder my wife. But I didn't, Patricia protested. She didn't drink enough. Because I knew what you were planning, I cut in. I've been taking an antidote for a week, but you still poisoned me. That was your choice. Mark pulled out his phone. His hands shook. I'm calling the police. Wait, I said, covering his hand. Let's give her a chance to be honest, maybe for the first time in her life. Patricia looked at us, her mask completely gone. The powerful, controlling woman was no more, just a desperate, lonely person afraid of losing her son. When you married her, everything changed, she whispered to Mark. You stopped coming by as much. You made decisions without asking me. She made you strong, and I hated her for it. So you tried to kill her? Mark's voice cracked. I convinced myself it was for the best. Patricia admitted, tears falling. I told myself you'd be happier without her. That one day you'd thank me. She shook her head. I was wrong. I see that now. I watched her closely. For the first time, I saw her truth, not the perfect woman she pretended to be, but someone who had built her life around controlling Mark. The police need to know, I said firmly. You tried to kill me, Patricia, but what happens next is up to you. Will you take responsibility or will you keep lying? Patricia hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. This is everything, she said softly. My research, my plans, when I planted the wolfsbane. I'll tell the police everything. Mark called the authorities. Patricia slumped deeper into her chair, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. As sirens echoed in the distance, I knew nothing would ever be the same. But when I looked at Mark, I saw his pain, but also his strength. We would get through this. Sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, was the only way forward. The next few months passed quickly, filled with police interviews, court hearings, and family therapy. Patricia pleaded guilty to attempted murder, which surprised everyone except me. Maybe she finally realized that controlling everything wasn't worth losing her son completely. On the day of her sentencing, I sat beside Mark in the courtroom, holding his hand. Patricia looked smaller in her plain navy suit, her usual confidence gone. When given a chance to speak, she turned to us. "I spent my life trying to control everything," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "I thought I knew what was best for my son. But that wasn't love. It was control, and it nearly made me do something unforgivable." The judge sentenced her to 5 years with required psychiatric treatment. As she was led away, she looked back at us one last time. This time, there was no manipulation in her eyes, just regret. Afterward, Mark and I walked through the courthouse gardens. "I keep thinking about all the signs I miss," he said. "The way she'd insulted you, the fake concern. I should have realized sooner." I squeezed his hand. "She was your mother. You wanted to believe the best about her. How can you be so forgiving?" he asked. "She tried to kill you, Olivia." I thought for a moment. Because I won't let her actions poison our lives. She's facing the consequences, and that's enough for me. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Patricia's psychiatrist. With her permission, he shared that she had a severe personality disorder, which made her obsess over control. She was finally getting help. Mark and I decided to sell the house near Patricia's and move somewhere new, where we could start fresh. While packing, I found the recorder with all the evidence from that night. "Should we keep it?" Mark asked. I shook my head and deleted the recording. "We don't need it anymore. Holding onto it won't help anyone heal." We bought a small house with a garden, and I started growing herbs again, the safe kind. Sometimes, while tending my plants, I think about Patricia's wolfsbane, how something beautiful can turn deadly, just like her love for her son. Mark visits Patricia in prison once a month. I don't go with him, but I send letters sometimes. Not because I fully forgive her, but because I believe people can change. Her replies are different now, honest, without manipulation. She's finally becoming the mother I needed, Mark told me after one visit. "It's just sad that it took something this extreme." Last week, I received a package from Patricia. Inside was a diary she'd kept since her arrest, filled with reflections on her mistakes. On the first page, she had written, "I spent my life trying to control others, only to realize the one who needed help was me. I'm sorry it took nearly destroying my family to see that." As I closed the diary, I felt a sense of peace. The woman who had tried to poison me was gone. In her place was someone finally facing her demons. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real. It was hope. Mark and I are expecting our first child now. Some people ask if we worry about Patricia's release, about her being a grandmother. But we've learned that real strength isn't about control. It's about boundaries, honesty, and allowing change. The tea set from that night still sits in our cabinet, not as a reminder of betrayal, but of my own strength. And every now and then, I make myself a cup of tea and smile, knowing that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's moving forward, healing, and living well. "You'll never prove it was me," Lisa smirked, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her wine glass as I doubled over in pain at our family dinner table. Through my blurred vision, I could see her satisfied expression while chaos erupted around us. My husband James was calling 911, his voice panicked as he described my symptoms. My mother-in-law Margaret hovered nearby, alternating between concerned glances and suspicious looks. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 32, I never expected to be rushed to the emergency room during what should have been a routine Sunday family dinner. The bitter taste in my coffee should have been my first warning. But I dismissed it, not wanting to cause a scene. Lisa, my sister-in-law, had insisted on pouring it herself, claiming it was a new premium blend she'd discovered. "Something's wrong," I gasped, my stomach cramping violently. I think I've been poisoned." Lisa's laugh cut through the room like glass. "Always so dramatic, Olivia. Maybe you're just allergic to something. Or maybe," she paused, her voice dripping with false concern, "you're pregnant?" The paramedics arrived within minutes, their efficient movements a blur as they loaded me onto a stretcher. Through the haze of pain, I heard Lisa's voice again, closer this time, whispering so only I could hear, "Good luck proving anything. No one will believe you anyway. They never have." She was right about one thing. No one had believed me before. For the past 3 years since I'd married James, Lisa had been systematically trying to destroy me. Small things at first, missing items, altered conversations, subtle manipulations that made me look careless or forgetful. But lately, her actions had become bolder, more dangerous. Last month, my brake lines had been mysteriously cut. The mechanic called it tampering, but there was no proof. 3 weeks ago, my allergy medication had been replaced with something else, sending me into a severe reaction. Again, no proof. As the ambulance sped toward the hospital, I fought to stay conscious. The paramedic was asking questions, taking vital signs, but all I could think about was the look on Lisa's face. She finally done it, escalated to something that couldn't be explained away as an accident or coincidence. "Stay with us, Mrs. Parker," the paramedic said, his voice firm but kind. "We're almost there. Can you tell me what you ate or drank before the symptoms started?" "Coffee," I managed to say. "Just coffee." Lisa made it. The emergency room was a flurry of activity. Blood draws, questions, more tests. James arrived shortly after, his face pale with worry. "Olivia, honey, what happened?" "Lisa says you were acting strange all evening before you got sick." Of course she did. Lisa had been laying the groundwork for weeks, making subtle comments about my unstable behavior, planting seeds of doubt in James's mind. She'd always been jealous of our relationship, convinced I'd somehow stolen her brother away from her. "James," I grabbed his hand, my voice weak but urgent. "You have to believe me. Lisa, she did this. She's been trying to hurt me for months." I saw the doubt flicker across his face, the same expression he always wore when I tried to expose his sister's actions. "Liv, you're not thinking clearly. Lisa would never. She's family." "Family?" The word felt bitter in my mouth. "Family didn't try to destroy you. Family didn't poison you during Sunday dinner." The doctor returned with initial blood test results, his expression grave. "Mrs. Parker, we found something concerning in your blood work. Something that suggests this wasn't a simple case of food poisoning." Lisa's confident smirk flashed through my mind again. "You'll never prove it was me." But as the doctor continued speaking, I realized the blood tests had revealed something far more sinister than just poison. Something that would change everything. Lisa had made a crucial mistake, one that would finally expose not just this attempt on my life, but a pattern of behavior that went back much further than anyone realized. The monitor beside my bed beeped steadily as the doctor explained what they'd found. With each word, the pieces started falling into place. Lisa hadn't just tried to poison me, she accidentally exposed her own dark secret, one that would turn her entire world upside down. I closed my eyes, remembering the satisfied look on her face as I collapsed at dinner. She thought she finally won, finally found a way to get rid of me for good. But she had no idea what was coming. Sometimes the truth reveals itself in the most unexpected ways, and as I lay there in the hospital bed, I realized this wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning. The blood test results changed everything. Dr. Stevens sat at the edge of my hospital bed, his face serious as he explained what they'd found. "Mrs. Parker, your blood shows traces of not just one type of poison, but a complex mixture of toxins. The concerning part is that these particular combinations match 3 unsolved poisoning cases from the past 5 years, all of them involving young women in their early 30s. My heart raced as I processed this information. 3 other cases, he nodded, glancing at his tablet. All 3 women survived, but they were never able to prove who poisoned them. The cases went cold. The most recent was 8 months ago, just before you married James." Suddenly, memories started flooding back. Lisa's strange comment at my engagement party. "You're lucky number 4, aren't you?" At the time, I thought she was referring to James' past relationships. Now it took on a much darker meaning. The police arrived shortly after, 2 detectives who introduced themselves as Martinez and Cooper. They listened intently as I recounted everything. The coffee, Lisa's behavior, the previous accidents that I'd suspected were her doing. "Mrs. Parker," Detective Martinez said, "we're going to need a detailed statement. These cases, they've been on our radar for years. We just never had enough evidence to connect them." James walked in during my interview, his face pale as he heard the detectives discussing the other cases. "This can't be right," he protested. "Lisa's a pharmaceutical researcher. She would never." "A pharmaceutical researcher?" Detective Cooper's head snapped up. Where exactly does she work? Meridian Labs, James replied. She's been there for 6 years. The detectives exchanged meaningful looks. Meridian Labs had a break-in 5 years ago, Martinez explained. Several experimental compounds were stolen. The same compounds we found traces of in the previous victims. I watched as the color drained from James's face. His sister, his brilliant, perfect sister, was suddenly being revealed in a completely different light. There's more, Detective Cooper added. All 3 previous victims had connections to your brother, Mr. Parker. One was his college girlfriend, another was his coworker he briefly dated, and the third was a woman he'd been seeing just before he met Olivia. James sank into the chair beside my bed, his hands trembling. This can't be happening. Lisa, she's always been protective of me. But this? Protective? I laughed bitterly. James, she's been systematically targeting women in your life. I'm just the first one who survived long enough to expose her. The hospital room fell silent as the weight of this revelation settled over us. Lisa hadn't just tried to poison me. She'd been practicing, perfecting her technique on other women who got too close to her brother. Detective Martinez stood up. We have enough to bring her in for questioning. The lab results combined with her access to the stolen compounds give us probable cause. Wait, I said, remembering something. Check my phone. I started recording our family dinners after the brake line incident, just audio recordings. I thought if something happened. Cooper quickly took my phone, and soon Lisa's whispered threat played clearly through the speaker. Good luck proving anything. No one will believe you anyway. They never have. James buried his face in his hands. Oh God, Olivia. All this time, you were telling the truth, and I didn't believe you. I let her. Mr. Parker, Martinez interrupted gently. We need to move quickly. Your sister's expertise means she'll know how to cover her tracks. Is there anywhere she might go if she suspects we're onto her? Before James could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Lisa. You should have died at dinner. Now I'll have to try harder. Family dinner's canceled next week. Permanently. The detectives immediately sprang into action, calling for backup and issuing a BOL for Lisa. But as I watched them rush out of the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Lisa had spent years perfecting her methods, carefully selecting her victims. She wouldn't give up easily. James gripped my hand tightly, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Olivia. I should have protected you. I squeezed his hand back, knowing we'd need each other for what was coming. Because somewhere out there, Lisa was planning her next move. And this time, she had nothing left to lose. The heart monitor beeped steadily as night fell over the hospital. Each sound a reminder that I was still alive, still here to expose the truth. But somewhere in the darkness, a woman who'd gotten away with attempted murder 3 times before was plotting her revenge. And I had a feeling the next family dinner would be one none of us would ever forget. In the days that followed, the police were everywhere, uncovering shocking truths. Lisa was missing, but her secrets were coming to light. Detective Martinez visited me at the hospital with a thick file. We found her journal, he said. Hidden in her desk at Meridian Labs. She wrote down everything. Every poisoning, every attempt. She was obsessed with protecting your husband, and it started years ago. I was leaving the hospital that afternoon, but nothing felt safe anymore. Every shadow seemed dangerous, and every stranger felt like they could be Lisa, ready to finish what she started. Then the phone rang. You ruined everything, Lisa's cold voice said. But I can fix it. One last family dinner, Olivia. Just you and me. Or I start sending those experimental compounds to every member of this family. Let's see how James handles watching everyone he loves suffer. I should have called the police or told James. But I knew Lisa wasn't bluffing. She had already shown how far she'd go. Where? I asked. Our childhood home. Tonight at 8. Come alone, or I start mailing packages. I left a note for James before he came home from work. I'm sorry. I have to end this. I knew he'd be mad, and the police would say I was being reckless. But it needed to end. The old Parker family house was dark and empty. It was abandoned after Lisa's parents died. She insisted on keeping it that way, saying it was for sentimental reasons. Now I wondered what other secrets it held. Lisa was waiting in the kitchen, a familiar coffee cup on the counter. One last drink together, she said with a smile. Fitting, isn't it? Why? I asked, pressing the record button on my phone. Why hurt all those people? Why me? He was mine first, she snapped. My brother, my family. Then others took him away. But you were the worst. You made him love you, made him choose you. He's not yours to keep, Lisa. Drink the coffee, she demanded, pushing the cup forward. Quick and painless. Better than you deserve. I reached for the cup, trying to stall for time. Just then, a floorboard creaked behind her. Lisa turned around as James stepped out of the shadows. I knew you'd come here, he said, his voice heavy with pain, to the place where it all started. Lisa's face twisted with anger. You weren't supposed to be here. This was supposed to be just us. It's over, Lisa, Detective Martinez said, stepping in with his gun drawn. We heard everything. But Lisa wasn't giving up. With a scream, she lunged at me, a syringe suddenly in her hand. Before anyone could react, a gunshot echoed through the house. Lisa fell, the syringe rolling away. Detective Martinez had shot her in the shoulder, stopping but not killing her. As they took her away in handcuffs, Lisa's calm mask finally broke. I did it for you, she screamed at James. Everything was for you. No, James said quietly. Everything was for yourself. After that, things were quieter than I expected. Lisa admitted to trying to hurt multiple people. Her journal, the recording, and the stolen chemicals found in her home were enough proof. She would spend years in prison, getting the help she needed. 6 months later, James and I were in our new home, far away from the painful memories. The last victim before you, James said softly. She survived but left town right after. I always wondered why. Now I know. I held his hand. We can't change the past, but we can choose how to move forward. He smiled and pulled me close. No more family dinners for a while. I laughed. Actually, I was thinking we could start our own tradition. New memories, just us. The doorbell rang. It was Detective Martinez and his wife, bringing takeout, new friends, new beginnings. The coffee pot sat untouched in the kitchen. Some traditions, we decided, were better left behind. Patricia stood by my hospital bed, pretending to be concerned. Such a shame about the brake failure, she said, trying to look sympathetic, but I could see the slight smile she tried to hide. She watched me struggle to reach for my water glass, clearly enjoying my pain. I'm Emma Carter, and 3 days ago, my mother-in-law tried to kill me. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was driving home from my nursing shift when my brakes failed on Mason Hill Road, the steepest street in our town. The brake pedal went straight to the floor, and nothing could stop the car. But instead of panicking, I used my emergency training. I downshifted, pulled the emergency brake, and steered the car into a ditch. It saved my life. I knew then that the accident wasn't an accident at all. Earlier that day, Mike, the mechanic who checked my car, showed me his phone with a serious look. Someone cut your brake lines on purpose, he said. He even had security footage showing Patricia sneaking into his shop the night before, wearing big sunglasses to hide her face. She said she was just there to borrow some sugar. Patricia never liked me. From the day I married her son James 5 years ago, she made it clear that I wasn't the kind of wife she wanted for him. I was just a nurse from a middle-class family, not the high society woman she had imagined. But I never thought she hated me enough to kill me. Patricia adjusted her scarf and continued, The doctors say you're recovering well. What a relief. James was so worried. Good thing you both got that life insurance policy last month. The one I recommended. There it was, the $2 million life insurance policy Patricia insisted we get, with her as the backup beneficiary. At the time, it seemed like just another one of her controlling ideas. But now, lying in his hospital bed, it was obvious why she wanted it so badly. Yes, good thing, I replied, keeping my voice steady. The police should finish their investigation soon. I watched her face closely. Her calm mask slipped just a little. Investigation. She tried to laugh. That's not necessary for a simple accident, is it? Oh, didn't you know? I said. They found evidence of tampering. They're checking all the security cameras in the area. Patricia gripped her purse tighter. I'm sure it's just a formality, she said quickly. Small-town police always make a big deal out of nothing. Just then, James walked in, looking tired but relieved to see me. Hey, love. How are you feeling? He asked, his smile warm and genuine. Better now that you're here, I said, grateful for his support. No matter how hard Patricia tried to cause problems, James always stood by me. Patricia put on her fake worried mom look. James, you should take a break. I'll stay with Emma. Actually, Mom, James said, hesitating. The nurse mentioned some unusual bruising on Emma. They think the police should look into it. Patricia's face went pale. The police? She stammered. They think someone did this on purpose. They're checking all possibilities, James said, including brake tampering. Patricia put her hand to her throat, pretending to be shocked. Who would do such a thing? I looked her right in the eyes. Yes, I said. Who indeed? Patricia quickly made up an excuse about a charity meeting and hurried out. James and I exchanged a look. He'd noticed her panic too. What Patricia didn't know was that Mike gave all the evidence, the cut brake lines, the security footage, to the police. She thought she had the perfect plan to get rid of me, but her scheme was about to blow up in her face. As I lay in my hospital bed, I realized Patricia wasn't just trying to kill me. She had been manipulating us for years, but her plan had failed and now the truth was coming out. The fight wasn't over, it was just getting started. Patricia visited me in the hospital, still pretending to be concerned. She didn't know that her world was about to fall apart. A few days later, Detective Martinez questioned her right in my hospital room. Mrs. Shaw, the detective said, using Patricia's maiden name. Why was your car seen at Morgan's auto shop the night before the accident? Patricia tried to stay calm, but I saw her confidence start to crack. James stood by the window, watching his mother with disbelief. I was just borrowing sugar from Emma and James's house. Patricia said quickly, I must have driven by the shop on my way home. At 11:30 p.m. Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. That's pretty late for baking. Patricia's hand shook as she adjusted her fancy watch. I host charity brunches. They require a lot of planning. The detective didn't back down. The security footage shows you spending 20 minutes under Emma's car. That's a long time to be borrowing sugar. Patricia turned pale. She hadn't realized that the shop had new security cameras. Mike had shown me the video, clear as day, of Patricia cutting the brake lines. There's been a mistake, Patricia said, her voice losing its usual confidence. I would never. Emma is like a daughter to me. I almost laughed. Patricia had spent 5 years trying to ruin my marriage. She always found ways to exclude me from family events and constantly told James he could do better. James stepped forward, his face hard. Mom, they found your fingerprints on the brake lines. Patricia looked at him in shock. James, you don't believe this, do you? They also found the wire cutters in your garden shed. He continued, his voice shaking, with Emma's blood on them. Patricia's carefully built world started to collapse. The police had searched her house and found the wire cutters she used. They also found a letter she was writing to the life insurance company hated before my accident. I can explain, Patricia started, but Detective Martinez didn't let her. We also found something interesting about the life insurance policy on your first daughter-in-law, the detective said. I looked at James confused. I didn't know about this. James's first wife, Sarah, had died in an accident 10 years ago, before I met him. Patricia never talked about her, except to make comparisons that made me feel like I didn't measure up. That was different, Patricia snapped, then quickly shut her mouth, realizing her mistake. Detective Martinez leaned in. Different how? The room went quiet. James's face went pale as he realized what Patricia was admitting. Mom, he whispered, his voice shaking. What did you do to Sarah? Patricia jumped up, clutching her purse. I don't have to listen to this. I'm leaving. But Detective Martinez had other plans. She nodded to 2 officers standing at the door. Mrs. Shaw, we need you to come with us. We have questions about Sarah Thompson's accident in 2013. As the officers led Patricia away, her usual calm was gone. She struggled, her hair falling out of place. James, you can't let them do this. I did it all for you. But James didn't move. He sat next to me, holding my hand as we watched his mother being taken away. When she was gone, he looked at me, his eyes full of pain. I can't believe Sarah's accident. I never even questioned it, he said, his voice breaking. Mom always told me Sarah wouldn't want me to grieve too long. I squeezed his hand, thinking about how close Patricia had come to getting rid of me too. But unlike Sarah, I had survived, and I had exposed Patricia for who she really was. Detective Martinez turned to us. We're reopening the investigation into Sarah Thompson's death. Mr. Carter, we'll need to talk to you about your mother's actions back then. James nodded, still in shock. I remembered Patricia's smug smile when she visited me in the hospital, thinking she had won. But she had underestimated me. Her perfect plan had failed, and instead of getting another insurance payout, she was facing prison for both my attempted murder and the death of James's first wife. The game was over, and Patricia had lost everything. The trial happened 6 months after my accident. I was fully healed but more aware of how close I'd come to dying. Patricia sat at the defendant's table, no longer polished and perfect. Her fancy clothes were replaced by plain ones, and gray roots showed in her once perfect hair. The evidence against her was clear. The courtroom watched security footage of Patricia cutting my brake lines. They showed the life insurance policy she took out on me and on Sarah, James's first wife. But what really sealed her fate was the new evidence about Sarah's death. The investigation into Sarah Thompson's death showed that her car was tampered with, just like Emma's, the prosecutor told the jury. We found Patricia Shaw's fingerprints on documents canceling an autopsy, papers she had no right to sign. I glanced at James. He listened to the details of Sarah's death, his face tense. I could see the pain and anger he had been hiding for years. When he testified, his voice was steady, but his words were sharp. My mother controlled everything, he said, looking right at Patricia. She picked my friends, my career, even my wives. But when they didn't fit her idea of perfect, she got rid of them. He paused, his voice breaking just a little. She killed them. Patricia tried to defend herself by claiming she was protecting James from gold diggers and social climbers. But the facts told a different story. Sarah and I both had our own jobs and money. The only threat we posed was to Patricia's control over her son's life. It took the jury less than 3 hours to decide. On the charge of attempted murder of Emma Carter, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder of Sarah Thompson, we find the defendant guilty. Patricia finally lost her calm. James, she screamed as the guards took her away. I did it all for you. They weren't good enough for you. But James didn't look at her. He held my hand as the judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Reporters surrounded us as we left the courthouse. How does it feel to know your mother-in-law tried to kill you? One asked. Do you have any comments on solving Sarah Thompson's case? James put his arm around me protectively and said, my mother caused pain to a lot of people. Today justice was served. That's all we have to say. That evening, we sat in our living room, still processing everything. The house felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. I talked to Sarah's parents after the trial. James said quietly. They always felt something was off about her accident but couldn't prove it. They thanked us for helping them find the truth. I held his hand. They have closure now. So do we. James let out a bitter laugh. You know the sad part? Mom was always scared of losing me, of losing her place in my life. In the end, she did just that. Her actions pushed me away. The doorbell rang. It was Mike, the mechanic whose security footage was key to convicting Patricia. He stood awkwardly at the door. I just wanted to see how you're doing, Mrs. Carter. When I saw those cut brake lines, he shook his head. Well, I'm glad you're still here. Some people get what they deserve. After Mike left, I thought about Patricia, now alone in a prison cell. Her need for control cost her everything, her freedom, her son's love, and her image of being the perfect mother. That night, James and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The air was warm and smelled of summer. For the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. James looked at me and asked, "What now?" I smiled, thinking about the future, a future without Patricia's dark influence. Now we live our lives the way we want. No more looking over our shoulders. No more fear. Patricia had tried to end my story, but she ended her own instead. And my story was just beginning. Sometimes justice comes in unexpected ways. And sometimes surviving is the best revenge.